Welcome to the Focal Insights Podcast Founder Hour edition, hosted by co-founder Joe Pawlak. Joe has been in the e-commerce industry for over 25 years. He grew and bootstrapped his own startup to a successful exit. Founder Hour episodes go behind the scenes to learn how some of the best e-commerce brands were founded, grown, and operated straight from the founders themselves. Founder Hour is brought to you by Focal Software, a new generation ERP and operation suite for e-commerce brands and third-party marketplace sellers. Focal was built with SMB brands and marketplace sellers in mind to help them grow profitably. Now let's welcome our host, Joe Pawlak.
Hello and welcome to the Focal E-commerce Insights Podcast, where we chat with e-commerce entrepreneurs about business, selling online, and how to overcome challenges for success. Today we have a very exciting guest, but before we get started, for listeners not familiar with the podcast or Focal Software is an e-commerce operations software and marketplace account management company. So if you need help growing your business profitably, be sure to stay tuned to future podcasts or feel free to reach out. Joining us today is Steven Sashen, who is the co-founder and chief Barefoot officer of Xero Shoes, a company that manufactures and sells lightweight, super comfy, barefoot-inspired shoes, boots, and sandals for both casual and performance wear. Steven co-founded Xero Shoes in 2009, has degrees from both Columbia and Duke universities, has started multiple companies, including Sinovation, Feel the World, and Garuda, has developed computer software that has become the industry standard used by film and television writers. He is an All-American sprinter and gymnast, host of a syndicated computer comedy show, and former stand-up comedian. He's selling online and retail in over 800 stores around the world. And Steven currently lives and works in Broomfield, Colorado, which is just outside of Boulder. Steven, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be here.
All right. Well, we always start off this podcast talking about general business and motivation to be in business, to start business. So why don't we start there with what motivated you to start your own company? And you can go back as far as you want to previous companies or your current company.
Well, I've never had a job in my life, so I've been really lucky that the things that I find interesting, I've been able to make a living doing in some way. So typically, what's happened is I found something that was annoying me, and I knew what the solution was, and decided to find a way to get that out in the world. So with Xero Shoes, I got back into sprinting after a 30-year break, was getting injured all the time, and found that running not in regular shoes got rid of my injuries and made me faster. And I wanted that barefoot-like experience. And it turned out I knew a bunch of other people would as well. So I started this, frankly, just as a little lifestyle hobby thing that I thought maybe would make a car payment. But very quickly, my wife and I, who co-founded the company with me, we realized that we were onto something that was literally life-changing, only because our customers kept telling us, I've been wearing your sandals or your shoes and they've changed my life, and away we go. So I've just been following things that I found interesting, and I've been ridiculously lucky that I've been able to make a living doing that for the last 45 years.
Yeah, awesome. So a couple things there. You saw a problem or a way to improve on something. And also you mentioned you never had a job, which is kind of similar to a lot of entrepreneurs, but what I hear there is they've got fired from every job that they've had and figured, hey, well, I got to create something where I can't get fired.
Yeah, it never occurred to me to apply for anything because I always had something interesting going on.
Yeah.
I keep meaning to apply for a job that I'm possibly one that I'm not even remotely qualified for, just to go through the process and see what it's like. And just because I've never had an interview, and I think that would be fascinating.
Yeah, well, interviewing can be fun, and if you're doing it for sport with your background in comedy, you can probably
I've thought about that, but I'd rather kind of play it straight just to see what it's like than try and mess with someone's head. Although I'd probably do both.
Yeah, you don't want to waste their time. Okay, so you got a business going. Now, when people start businesses, they always come up against challenges. So that's a big part of what we want to talk about here is from your experience, what were the big ones and how did you overcome them?
Well, it's an interesting question. I can answer the first part, but not the second. So the biggest challenge we had is that we were growing so fast and we're an inventory heavy business, was getting the cash to support the inventory that we knew we needed for the following year. And in fact, we never had enough cash to get enough inventory for the following year up until the end of 2020, when we took some private equity money and then had the ability to kind of, test and see what was going on. But even then it was tricky because of COVID, supply chain, and whatever other issue I can't think of. There's a bunch of issues then that people might remember. And so even then we were still running out of product when we were growing almost 100% a year. And so my wife, who's the finance operations person, or was, I'm the product marketing person. She was spending most of her time trying to find sources of cash that we could get access to. In fact, the reason we took the private equity money is we lost a couple $1 million worth of debt instruments that we had access to due to supply chain problems and COVID related issues and the trade war. And I would argue that we still haven't really solved that. There's still things that we can do. There's products that we could create and markets we could enter that all we need is additional cash to do that. And so we're still trying to raise cash to continue to do what we know we have the ability to do. And that's an ongoing problem. And frankly, I almost can't even imagine that that won't continue to be a problem until we're, oh my, well, actually, I was going to say some number, but I know companies that are at that number growing at decent rates and they're still raising cash. So that's probably a never-ending problem for anything growing quickly that's an inventory heavy business.
Yeah, yeah, and growth is the problem, and fulfilling orders. That's one of those good problem to have, a lot of people would say. But I'm wondering, prior to getting to that, though, were you leveraging relationships that you had before? Most people, their first big challenge is not growth.
No, that was our problem from day one. So literally, the leverage that we had is that I had about $300,000 worth of credit cards, and so we were just cycling things on credit cards until I think we got our first. Well, we found a family office that believed in what we were doing, and we negotiated for a line of credit with them that kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We got an SBA loan earlier on in the process. We've gotten lines of credits from the bank. I mean, growth has been, everyone loves to say, that's a good problem to have. And that's just, I'm going to be candid, stupid. All problems are problems. They're just different problems. And this is the one, frankly, if you don't manage the finance and the growth well, that'll put you out of business faster than almost any other problem I can think of.
Yeah, and you also talked about one of the biggest problems people run into is the capital, or how do you fund this thing when you start it. So you mentioned a few ways that you do it, but when you get into the VC world, that I'm curious when you got that first round of funding, because it's really changed a lot. So I'm wondering, to any listeners that may be at a stage where they're trying to get money, how do you feel that's evolved in the last few years?
Well, we got private equity money, which is different than VC money.
Okay.
They usually have different goals. And the simplest thing I would say is, if at all possible, avoid both of them. And that's simply because the, boy, how do I want to do this? Rarely will you find a financial partner who understands your business as well as you do and can contribute as much as you need for someone to contribute. There's occasions where that happens, but we did an equity crowdfunding raise in 2017 and raised a little over $1 million. And we were actually hoping to continue to do equity crowdfunding raises all the way to an equity crowdfunded IPO, but we weren't able to do that. Again, we couldn't spin one up fast enough after COVID kicked in, and getting the private equity money was what we needed. And now that we had the private equity money, we couldn't do those campaigns. So I'm my thing, and my wife feels the same way, is whenever you can keep control, especially if your business is unusual as ours is, the more you can keep control. And it's unusual both on the product side and the marketing side. I come from a digital marketing background, and so I was applying digital marketing tactics to physical products in a way that no one had ever done before, or very few people had. And the combination of the unusual product and the unusual type of marketing that we were doing makes it very, very tricky to deal with people who aren't willing to just trust that you know what you're doing, even though they invested in you because you demonstrated that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. In a lot of cases, the same motivation that people had to own their own company, to control their decision making to do the things that they want to do. They'll lose that oftentimes when they get additional owners that come in that
Yeah, and
want
to
to
be
have.
clear, this is not bad mouthing PE and VC per se. I mean, it's the same thing if you just have a partner and you disagree about something. There's always going to be, I mean, in the early stages of our company, I would come up with these brilliant marketing ideas. My wife would tell me we didn't have the money for it. I'd walk away and mope for 24 hours, and my job was to, get over myself and find another way to do it. And one of the happiest days of my life was when she said to me, anything you want to test for $1,000 or less, you don't need my permission. I was like, oh my God, I love you so much. So, there's always going to be differing opinions between finance and marketing, I mean, it's just a little bit exaggerated when there's someone who's not in your business every day and understands what and how you're doing what you're doing and what and how you think and how that impacts what you're doing.
Yeah. Okay, well, you talked a little bit about COVID, and we know that that changed everybody's views on e-commerce and online purchasing. It really, I think, in my opinion, uh, accelerated everything that was going to happen anyway. So
Correct.
instead of e-commerce happening 10 years from now, where we are, it happened in 3 years
Yeah.
or 4 years.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, and what moves did you have to make to adapt?
Well, I agree with you, and we didn't really have to do anything different because we'd already been doing e-commerce for 11 years before that happened, and I've been doing it for 20 years before that. So the biggest thing that changed for us was simply that there was, how do I want to describe this? There was more competition for getting containers to bring product in. Containers got really expensive. We had to deal with issues about, we had to fly product in just to have something to sell, even if it wasn't going to make us money, because we didn't want people to not have something. Also, because we knew our lifetime value was high for a customer. And so we needed to make decisions that were related to COVID per se and the supply chain and trade war per se, but not the expansion of ecom. And frankly, for footwear, it's only going to the thing that changed. People have to break things down a little more granularly than just e-commerce or even just e-commerce footwear. What started happening was more people were buying footwear online, A, because they couldn't get to stores, but also many people, when they're buying footwear in particular, they're just rebuying something they already have or something they already know from a brand they already know. And so the stats are very different when people are just rebuying or buying from an existing brand they're familiar with versus getting them introduced to a brand new product or brand new company, let alone one like ours, a barefoot inspired thing, which is the antithesis of everything else people have been wearing for 50 years. So the other thing that did happen during that time that didn't really impact us, well, actually, it did. I just realized that is that more companies, after they'd been seeing what we were doing for 11, 12 years or 13 years, they started getting on board and into the minimalist footwear space as well, because they thought it was easy to do, whether they started with Kickstarter or, some other way. Um, and it isn't true. Many of them have found that it's harder than they thought and are not still around. But what it did that was good is it actually raised the level of awareness. There's more people doing this. It just brought awareness. And since we always had more products for more uses than anybody else, it probably helped our business as well. I'm a big fan of competition. It can make you better and it can make the entire category you're in more visible and then work better for everybody, especially, frankly, the people at the top.
Yeah, yeah, competition, capitalism, that's kind of just how everybody improves.
Yeah. Early on, when we were pitching for money, sometimes people would say to me, isn't what you're doing just a marketing play? And I would say, isn't everything?
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so you were already queued up for COVID when it hit, but what tools were you using to sell online or marketplaces, and what have you
Sure.
found that helped with that?
Well, I got to tell you something funny about that. We were queued up for COVID because my wife thinks farther ahead than most people. And when we got hit with the first round of tariffs, there was a rumor that we were going to get hit with a second round. And so she brought in a whole lot of inventory, spent a lot of money on inventory at the end of 2019. And everyone thought we were insane. And then in 2020, we were the only people who had product to sell. So we are a WooCommerce shop, and we have been for since 2012, if I'm remembering correctly. We're on WooCommerce because it's an open source platform and allows us to test things so we can find out if what people call best practices, quote unquote, are best practices, and they rarely are, frankly. And we use Klaviyo for our email and CRM. We've got a bunch of other stuff on the back end. I mean, we're not doing anything special on the tool side. We're doing things special on how we market side and how we do everything else side.
Hmm. Yeah, you talked a little bit there about some supply chain issues, and that was quite a phenomenon with the inventory management and the demand management. Just as a side note to see what you think, but I like the example of the bicycle industry or even Peloton.
Oh yeah.
So nobody could go outside, or if they could go outside, they could do something like ride a bike. So now everybody wants a bicycle. Well, they're all out,
Or
so
go
they're
for a walk, or
back.
go for a hike, or go for a run. Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. It's easy. You barely need anything
Yeah.
to do some of these things. So then they over ordered because for some reason people thought that demand to go ride a bicycle was going to be around forever. And now there's warehouses full of bikes that nobody
I
wants.
don't I don't know that they thought the demand would go on forever, although some did. I think that they didn't and really couldn't anticipate the change in how people would behave around COVID. I think, there are a lot of people who thought this is going to be the end of the world and nothing's going to change, and they were buying as if that were true. So I would contend that some of it was, it's just timing. It takes time to make product. You put the order in, it takes time to get it back. And so trying to predict what you need based on something so unprecedented is part of the
Mhm.
glitch. And there are many companies, even multi-billion dollar footwear brands that I know, who up until even a year ago were still dealing with inventory issues that they had created during those first 2 years of COVID.
Yeah, that's a good point. Nobody knew if that was going to last 1 year,
Forever,
2 years, or
forever.
20, 10 years, or
Yeah,
forever. Yeah. So,
yeah.
okay. So the e-commerce market is about $6 trillion right now. Online purchases about 25% of everything that's purchased anywhere. That's going to 8 trillion in a few years, pretty shortly. Yeah, I know it's a staggering statistic.
No, I was thinking the other way around. I didn't think it was that high, frankly.
Uh,
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not paying attention to the stats, so I don't know.
yeah, 6 trillion, you know how these are all lagging indicators. That could be
Yeah.
2023 or something, but it's increasing. We know that. So what are your thoughts on online selling? More of the same, just keep getting efficient, keep adapting a little bit, or
Well, fundamentally, nothing is. Look, when the internet started, everyone's like, it's a whole new thing. No, it's just a new form of advertising or a new advertising channel. The fundamentals are still the same. Get traffic, convert traffic. That's it. And it's just the way the opportunities for how you get that traffic are changed, and the opportunities of what you can do with that traffic have changed. Not a lot. I mean, look, the latest thing as of today, what's today? Doesn't matter. As of whenever we're taping this now, Google has made some changes to how they're showing what they're ranking for, especially consumer product companies. And what they're now giving people credit for is what many of us have been doing for 25, 30 years. And so Home Depot in particular. And basically what they're giving credit for is someone's looking for a particular category of products, for example, then Google's going to show them a category page. If they're looking for, I don't know, 4 foot high refrigerators, what they want to be able to deliver someone is a page on a website that has a category of 4 foot high refrigerators and a bunch of useful content about 4 foot high refrigerators. And this is what, again, Home Depot has been doing for 25 years. It's what we were doing 25 years ago. Things changed in the middle quite a bit. There's often weird things that suddenly get a lot of attention. If you had a Wikipedia page about you, that was ranking number one for a while. I'll really test people's memory. There was a thing called Squidoo. If you had a Squidoo lens for a while, that got you high rankings. Reddit now gets some high rankings. So there's things coming and going, but there's the fundamental thing is people want to get to what they want as quickly as they can and identify whether that's the thing they want easily, and or go somewhere else to do some research. So the only thing that's changing really is some of the methodology. How is AI going to play out in this? We don't know now, and anyone who's predicting is lying to you because no one predicted the AI thing the way it is now anyway. So why do we think they can predict any better about where it's going? It may be that at a certain point we have AI agents, and I say, I'm going to need a pair of men's size 7 shoes that fit me that have the following characteristics, and a day later they show up at our door. I don't know. And frankly, I don't care. It's sort of like when people ask about my projections for the company for anything more than a couple of weeks in advance. I go, how much lying do you want me to do? Because anything I say is probably wrong, and I don't like giving you wrong information. If you want to see a 5-year projection, why in God's name would I do that? Because it will be wrong the day I hand you the paper. So I'm just trying to play it. I'd say day by day, but that's not true. Maybe month by month at this point, based on what I'm seeing happening now that we can take advantage of or that we want to try and take advantage of. Look, a lot of people spend a lot of money on metaverse ideas, not happening. A lot of footwear brands spend a lot of money on 3D printing, not working. So whenever people think too far about whatever the latest, hot thing is, that tends to not work. And then, of course, there'll be some rare exception where people go, but that guy figured it out. It's like that guy was guessing. There's 100 other guys who did the same thing and it failed for them for innumerable reasons. So anyway, that's my obnoxious way of saying, while I am future oriented and visionary in that regard, when it comes to what I'm doing tactically, I'm just trying to figure out what I can do today.
Yeah, and that's a lot of business. You can do all the planning you want, or as Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan
Till they
until
get
you
punched in the
punch him in the
face.
face.
You could, I don't care how much planning you had done if you were planning on starting a Middle Eastern tourist agency before 9/11, nor do I care how much planning you didn't do if you were starting a duct tape and plastic sheeting business on the 12th. So
Yeah,
there's so many things that are completely out of our control, and we don't like to admit that. But it's like it's not, I don't want to say it's like gambling. It's like playing blackjack with perfect strategy. It's not going to go in your direction all the time, but you know where it's going to go directionally.
yeah, yeah. You're at least giving yourself a chance.
The best edge you can give yourself.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, what else did you touch on there?
Got me, man.
Okay, yeah, we blasted through a lot of stuff there. Oh yeah, AI. As far as
Yeah.
predicting the future or planning for the future, uh, I'm seeing AI replacing Google here very quickly, which everyone leaned on pretty hard for the last 30 years, or search engines. But my point there is just that it's moving so fast that yeah, we don't know what AI is going to look like in a year.
No, and you got to keep in mind, this is not a prediction, but this is just some thinking. Like when any of the search engines or any of the social media platforms come out with some way that you can market your product, they'll usually make it cheap or free at first to kind of get the ball rolling. And then at some point, they need to make money. So these AI companies, at some point, they're going to need to make money beyond you subscribing and paying money to be a subscriber. What does that mean? Advertising in some form, whether it's just that and the other thing, there's always people trying to hack it. If there's a way of making money, someone's going to try and hack whatever system's out there to make the money. So right now, there's some ideas about how the LLMs are working to identify if you ask for about like Barefoot shoes, how it talks about who it's recommending and why it's recommending. At a certain point, these companies are going to have to make actual money instead of just VC money that they're pocketing. And that's going to mean that they're going to have to direct human beings to places to spend money and get something in the middle. There's a guy, this is back in 1993, a marketer that I knew and loved said, it's really easy to make money. Figure out where the money is flowing and get in the way of it. Right now, the money is flowing into AI from venture capital, and they're not requiring those companies to actually generate revenue. When they have to generate revenue, they're going to have to get in the middle of that conversation from what people want to how they can spend money and take money for that process. I don't see any other way other than, again, subscription level stuff, which this is kind of funny. Remember in the early days of like cable or satellite TV, where people were complaining, I'm spending all this money for a bunch of channels I don't care about. I just want the channels I want. Then
Mhm.
we were spending $60 a month. Now we're spending 200 and 250 to get just the channels we want. The same kind of thing could happen with AI, where we end up we end up having to spend money to get subscriptions to things that are going to point us to things that we're paying money for. So
Yeah,
I don't know where it's going again, other than at a certain point, they're going to have to monetize it, and we, the consumer, will somehow be paying for it, whether it's invisibly by higher prices because there's advertising expenses, or overtly with subscriptions, or maybe, we figure out cold fusion and there's free energy for the rest of our lives and it becomes Star Trek.
yeah, yeah. Or The saying, if the product is free, you're the product. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
they're mining some information, your habit, and then they're using it.
Yeah,
That's the
I call that
invisible.
in yeah, I call that invisible money. It's
Yeah,
like somehow there's money being transferred to someone somewhere, you're just not seeing it.
yeah, yeah. There's actually, on a side note, there's actually an Internet Bill of Rights that addresses that, where you get passive income if anyone wants to use your data for anything.
You know, this is the thing. Everyone talks about data privacy, and had we been smarter earlier and been able to protect our data and sell it for, micro fractions of a penny, so and give permission as appropriate and auction it away, then
Yeah,
people would not have an issue with data privacy. They'd have an issue with how much money can I get for my data and what am I getting from it. So now, that horse has kind of left the barn, and we're trying to see if we can rein it back in some way, which is going to be very tricky. But no, you nailed it. It's if the fact that we're not in control of it, it's not about control, it's about we're not in control of the money of it.
right. We don't benefit.
Correct.
Somebody
Well,
else
I would
benefits.
argue that we do. When people say, I don't want you knowing everything about me, I don't want, people just sending me ads for things I want. It's like, no, that's exactly what you want. I don't need to see more ads about tampons. I've bought enough and I'm not going to tell you why. So we really do want to see the things that we want, but we want them to be legit. We don't want to
Right.
get scammed. We don't want to feel like we're being manipulated, but we do want things to be easier for us to get the things that we think we need to be happier.
Yeah, I guess I should add, we're not benefiting monetarily anyway.
Well, we're certainly not benefiting as much as the billionaires who've gotten in the middle of that data flow
Right. That's
and found a way
exactly.
to make billions a penny at a time.
Yeah, and the AI mania reminds me a little bit about the late '90s, where everybody was investing in anything that had the word blue in it, blue and a .com, and
Correct.
and their virtue was their lack of income or profitability.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's happening now. I'm seeing venture money going into companies with AI as part of their name that have not even demonstrated that they have a product.
Yeah.
And to your point, the biggest problem that we had raising money, especially when we were talking to private equity, was that we were profitable. And so suddenly they're doing multiples of our profit when we're a high growth business and should be looked at from a growth perspective. I know footwear brands that raised hundreds of millions of dollars because they were never profitable, but had a good story about how they might eventually get there, that if you asked anyone in the footwear business would say that will never happen. And in fact, it never did.
You got to have a good story.
It seems to help. And sometimes people get swayed by certain stories, even though they think they're smart, they are just swayed by a story. And I mean, look, it's Dutch tulips all over again.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so on the back on the e-commerce technology side, since we're an e-commerce technology company, let's talk a little bit about what you've got going on as far as different tools that you're using, marketplaces. What do you use to run your business? Are you doing spreadsheets? Do you have an ERP, or what do you got going on?
We are, well, there's been a lot of transition, but we're spinning up with Acumatica on the ERP side. We have, on the shipping side, we're using a product called Ship Hero. Overseas, we're using different products because they're not working there. We have my favorite, well, used to be my favorite product. I'll still pitch it anyway. For handling reviews, we use a product called Stamped.io. We work with a company called Upsell It for some on-page, it's not really CRO as much as things to increase conversion. But I know that sounds weird, but it's not like on page things. It's more managing traffic in a certain way and helping people find what they want and to make decisions about buying. I mean, there's probably 50 different things we're using, and I'm not thinking of them off the top of my head. Like I mentioned, we're a WooCommerce shop. We are handling our own hosting with a company that I would tell you the name of, but I'm 63 and names fall out of my head right now. So we're not spun up on AWS, although we've looked into doing that. That's a longer project. I'm not with something like Shopify. I'm not going to badmouth Shopify, but we're not with them because I like open source things. I've been doing this for so long. I've seen closed environments come and go, and getting data in and out of closed environments can be tricky. So we like having more control over things. Uh,
WordPress is the big daddy of open source e-commerce.
it is, and it actually powers a lot of e-commerce, more than Shopify. If you look at the number of people making money with e-commerce. I think WooCommerce outperforms Shopify significantly. I could be
Yeah.
wrong. I'm not, don't get mad at me if I'm mistaken. But suffice it to say, that's why we're on Woo is
I'm
that.
pretty sure you're correct. And WordPress has been around for 30 years longer than Shopify as well.
Well, and yeah, WordPress, I know Google is sort of anxious about the fact that WordPress powers so much of the internet.
Yeah.
And they work very closely together. And happily, we are um, of one of the most, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know that we're one of the biggest, but we're certainly one of the most robust and creative WooCommerce sites. So we talk to them all the time about things that we see that are working, things that aren't working, things we want, and happily we have a voice at that table.
What about cart abandonment tools? That was something that's been
Yep.
around for a while, but it really seems to have taken off in the last 6, 7 years.
Yeah, so upsell, it can handle a bunch of that, not all of that. And then we also have we've done it a number of different ways. Klaviyo can do some of it, but not
Mhm.
necessarily the way we need to. So I don't know that there's any one tool that's any better or worse for cart or checkout abandonment.
But
Actually, there
you're
is. Yeah, wait. Yeah, no, I can't really talk about that one.
but you're having success with that.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. Well, and I say that be, I don't want to be glib about that. We are having success with that, which is why we're doing it. In other words, I test things, and if they work, I use them. And if they don't work, I don't care what someone tells me, I don't. As an example, way back when we were told that if we had trust seals underneath our add to cart button or underneath checkout, that would improve conversion. So I tested that and it didn't. In fact, it made conversion worse for us. Now that may be unique to us, but my philosophy, my theory on why it made it worse is why are you trying to convince me that you're trustworthy? I didn't, that was not a question that came up in my mind until now. So I'm always, whenever someone pitches me on something where they tell me it's going to make me a bunch of money, I ask, how quickly and cheaply can I find out if you have your head up your butt? Because you may, but I don't know. And all I want to know is the only thing I can control is risk. That's all I can have any control over. I want to know, I want to find out fast and cheaply if it's not going to work. And if it is going to work, then I'll spin it up. But I can't commit to a lot of money. When someone says, here's a new tool and you have to commit to a 1 year contract, I went, no, I will never do that. We haven't tested it yet. We don't know if it's going to work. So why would I commit to a year that I can't get out of without having proven that it's going to add value to my company? I don't care if you've been successful with every other company you've worked with. That doesn't mean you will be. I might be your first strikeout. So I'm very, very diligent about managing risk and not trusting people when they just say, when they say, let me send you a case study, I go, don't bother. I don't care. I need to test it on my own. I need to prove it for myself, not from what someone else, where especially when you're quoting, we increased their business by, or whatever, we increased their conversion by 200%. I go, oh, if you increased the conversion by 200%, that means their original conversion was horrible. So don't give me percentages. Don't give me vague things. My favorite, and I'll leave it on this note, is when someone says, well, we're really confident that, it's going to work. I go, yeah, I don't really care how you feel. All I want to see is the data.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. My background's in the travel industry, and they're very low conversion rates. So if you can double a zero point 0.5 conversion rate, it's a big deal revenue, but it's not a massive increase, really.
Right. And for us, with ours, if someone doubled our conversion, we'd be the most successful footwear company on the line online in the history and future of footwear online. It's just not going to happen.
All right. Well, we covered a lot of ground there. Now we're going to get to a new thing that I do called the speed round, which is just giving you some concepts and getting your initial thoughts on it.
Okay.
Not getting too deep into it. So,
Okay.
so let's hit it. I got 3 questions for you. So, for anyone that wants to start their own business, they're thinking of starting their own business or their own company, what would be the number one piece of advice you would give them? And it can't be don't do it.
Oh man. Okay. Well, because I was going to say get a government job with a pension. It would be find a way to test your idea as quickly and cheaply as possible. Like literally build out a one-page website, put ads, say, on Google or Facebook, see if you can drive traffic, see if you can get people to click on something saying that they're interested. I mean, what people used to do is they'd run a full page ad in a magazine where you had to clip out a coupon and mail it in with a check. And they would see how many checks they got before they decided if they were going to start the business. Do some version of that. Like Tim Ferriss, when he came out with the book, The 4 Hour Work Week, he came up with the title by running Google ads with a bunch of different titles to see which one got the most clicks. That's how he picked that one. Do the same kind of thing.
Yeah. So do a little bit of homework and have a realistic plan, or
No,
a
like more than homework. I mean, the homework is put your money where your mouth is. Put up a really simple website or just run the ads and see what happens. I mean, do something where you get people who are not your friends and family, people who do not know who you are, to, as close as you can, get them to prove that they're willing to take their hard-earned money out of their digital pocket.
Yeah, that's great. I love the not your friends and family because I was in the website design business and I used to say the same thing because they'd say, "Oh, well, my brother loves it," or my coworker thinks the website's great. And of course, they're not. I used to say they're not going to insult your baby. Like you put your
Exactly.
heart and soul into this, they're not
Exactly.
going to insult it. So
Yep.
test it, get the data.
Yeah.
Is it
And
really
and
good?
and here, but here's the crazy thing. Who cares how it looks? How does it perform? I
That's
have
right.
friends who have hideously ugly websites. And look, if people go to my website right now, you're going to have complaints because I do too, because some people have done things that I've told them not to do and they did them anyway, and I haven't wrested control back to fix that. But regardless, I have friends who have hideous websites that make them $10 million a year. And they've tested prettier websites that did not. So different strokes, different folks.
Yeah, yeah, it's objective versus subjective because you
Yeah.
and I may have a completely different view of what's beautiful in a website, but one works and one doesn't.
There are shoes on this wall that I do not get to save my life, and they are some of our best sellers.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect example. Okay, next question. Successful entrepreneurs often say you need to surround yourself with good people and you need a little bit of luck. And sometimes they're one and the same, meaning hiring is so difficult and building a team is so difficult. Once in a while, you get somebody that is just a big, huge contributor and a massive win. But you can combine those two or you can separate them. Good
Um,
team and luck.
I think luck is the most important thing and completely underestimated. I mean, look, if I'm really, if, and this is going to sound a little crazy, but this is literally how I think. The luckiest, what's allowed me to do everything I've done is that I was born to particular parents at a particular time in a particular place. That's it. I mean, I'm going to use my gymnastics career as a version of that. If I was living on the other side of the street from where I grew up, I would not have had a high school gym teacher or junior high, let alone high school gym teacher, who happened to be a multi-time world champion in gymnastics and one of the greatest coaches ever. Literally, wrong side of the street would have made a difference in my entire life. The fact that my wife, who avoided me like the plague for years after we met, eventually became my wife. Otherwise, this business wouldn't happen. She's, like I said, she's an operations finance person. I'm a product marketing person. So for me, it's 99.99999% luck. And then granted, there's another 100% chart that it's 90% working your butt off and 10% hopefully being smart enough to put out the fires that started overnight, even though nothing changed. The finding good people, I would call that luck as well. And for us, sometimes it's been literal luck. Like our first product designer was walking his dog and normally his wife did. Another friend of ours was walking his dog. Normally his wife did. The dogs knew each other, so the guy started talking. Hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm the senior product designer at Crocs. Oh, my friend Steven and Lena have a shoe company, which at that time we didn't. We were selling a sheet of rubber, string, and instructions on how to make a 10,000-year-old sandal. But this guy, Dennis, gave his phone number to our friend who gave it to me, and I sat on it for months because why would this guy want to talk to me? And then finally we got together for lunch and he said, Your little sandals changed my life. How can I help? I went, Help? You were getting paid 5 times in a year, 5 times what we made last year. He said, Yeah, but I'm retired now. And oh, well, then you're hired. And so the luck factor in that is through the roof. And anyone who wants to take credit for, I don't know, again, I don't even bother with that one because I can't change my luck and I can't change my whatever the other thing is. Um, we've met really good people out of nowhere. A friend of a friend brought a friend to brunch one day, and this is a guy who had built a website when he was 15 that was getting 1 million hits a day. And I said, "Are you looking for a job?" He said, "Yeah, okay." And he's been with us for 8 years. So what did I have to do with that other than I recognized smart kid? That was
Yeah.
it. That's all I had to do. And that doesn't take a whole lot of skill.
Yeah, and I think in business you have to expect some bad luck and some good luck.
Oh, no, no. We've had a few people who were extremely bad luck, and it seemed like good luck at first and turned out to be the exact opposite. Again, here's the fundamental thing. Human beings want to control things so that they can, because we are always thinking, what do we need to do to get the result we want so that we can finally be happy? The problem is that whole line of reasoning is complete crap. You're not that good. Things can change. You're going to get there and you probably won't be happy either. If you want to have fun, sneak into an event where it's a bunch of high net worth people talking about their lives and just hear how miserable many of them are, mostly because they achieved this great financial success and they're either no happier than they were before or less happy than they were before. And or just go read the book Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert. That'll talk you out of the whole question of whether you care about, or also read the book Fooled by Randomness by Nassim Taleb, which will talk about the luck phenomenon and how we underestimate the importance thereof. That's a
Yeah,
mic drop on those two books, by the way.
yeah, very nice.
Cool.
Okay, last speed round question is if you had a magic wand to fix one thing that is holding you back or slowing you down, what would that one thing be?
um, that I'm not a billionaire, not because I need the money, but because if I was, people would listen to what I say more often. So um, I'm a really smart marketer. And I know that I don't like saying that, but I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. That's all. Like longevity weeds out the people who can't do it well. And I'm in a situation right now where uh, uh, um, uh, if I could get certain people to listen to certain ideas that I have, I think things could be going much better, much faster. And God, that sounds horribly narcissistic and self-involved. So I'm going to come up with another answer for the fun of it, the one that doesn't make me want to vomit a little bit in my
Oh, I'm
mouth.
just curious, is that you personally or the business or the brand?
Me. So
You
here's
okay.
why I say this. Talk to anyone who worked with Steve Jobs and ask them what they thought of the guy. They're not fans. But a lot of people put up with a lot of what he was doing because he had a great company and because he had a whole lot of money and could exert influence with that money. I don't like that idea. I don't like, people using their financial position to um, motivate people through fear or something like that. But suffice it to say, for some weird reason, when someone's rich, we assume they're really smart and listen to them more. I know a couple of billionaires who say, I do not know why people think I'm smart. I was really, really lucky. That's it. And so, again, if I was a billionaire, I wouldn't have to argue with some people about some points that I'm making. I wouldn't have to test them necessarily. Although, actually, it's not even true that I wouldn't have to test them. I always say I have a lot of opinions because I've been doing this for so long, but I do not care what any of my opinions are. I just want to see the data after we test them. So, a better answer, if I could change one thing, it would actually be a variation on that, though. I wish the company had more money free and clear because there are so many things that we can do with this brand. And the only thing that has gotten in the way is not having the cash to bring in the people that we need to deploy the things that we know that can change more people's lives. And that has been incredibly frustrating. Early on, when we were looking at with this private equity company, one of their advisors asked me, he said, "Do you see this becoming a $1 billion brand in 10 years?" And I said, "Oh God, no, only 7." He's like, "What?" I said, "Now, will it happen or not? I don't know, but I can show you the path and you're not going to disagree with any part of it other than the x-axis, other than the timing. And what we need to do this is a certain amount of capital, more every time, just because we're moving into a different market or we're doing a new kind of product or developing a new kind of manufacturing. And those things take, R&D capital. And again, with the growth that we had, we were using all of our profit for inventory, not for expanding into some of those other places and categories. And that's been um, the gap between where we are and where I know we can be when I'm thinking about that is very unpleasant. And of course, that's the mathematical equation for how to be unhappy or stressed out is think about
Right.
where you are versus where you want to be. And again,
Exactly.
read Stumbling on Happiness and you'll get over believing that what you're thinking is true in that case. I won't be happier, but I just want to actualize this thing. And again, what we're doing at Xero Shoes is so much bigger than me. When we literally have people telling us every day, you've changed my life. When people have come up to me on the street crying to hug me because they recognize me, um, that's something that deserves everything I can possibly give it. And I don't have personally the money to give it to move things forward as fast as I would like to make all that happen. And
Yeah.
maybe it's a fantasy and moving that fast would not be good. I don't know, but that's the way my brain works, is how can I get to this thing to make it as much as what I can imagine it can be.
Yeah, and that is a very common thing in business and being an entrepreneur, because really all we have is time, and you're the one that has the vision. So you know where, if there's A to Z, you know where Z is,
I
and you
do.
want to get there as fast as you can. But there's all this friction against that,
Yeah.
and money can certainly speed up that timeline, because you can
Yeah.
hire more people, you can do faster R&D, you can, do all the things that you
And,
need to speed it up.
and you're right in that even if you have all the cash, going a certain amount faster might be problematic because it's hard to necessarily manage things growing super, super fast. Like if a marketing agency calls me and says, we're the fastest growing internet marketing agency, and I go, oh, stop right there. I can't work with you. They're like, what? I go, there's only so much talent in the world. And in internet marketing, there's only like 10 people in the world who are experts at everything that you really need to do. And not only do you not have those 10 people on any of those 10 people on your team, but if you're growing that fast, the amount of talent you have, you're diminishing your overall marketing IQ by just bringing in more and more people to handle the growth. And so you can grow too quickly. But for the sake of saying it, the things that I'm talking about are actually very manageable because they're not silos per se, but they're chunks of just expanding things we've already proven we know how to do, but just don't have the ability to do more of them. It's not doing something crazy. It's not doing something we don't know. It's just, and again, it's because we're hearing it from our customers. We're hearing it from our vendors. We're hearing it from everyone we work with, and we just can't get there yet. So I'm not trying to go from wherever we are now to $1 billion tomorrow. I'm just trying to get things in place to give the company the best chance that it has to actualize what's possible. And there's some people who will say things like that. I'm not going to mention certain famous wealthy entrepreneurs who have been crazy with their vision and proven to be crazy. If I mapped out what I'm talking about, you'll go, yeah, that makes total sense. There's nothing that I'm talking about that is Looney Tunes, like, we're going to put all other footwear companies out of business, or we're going to be, the first company selling on the moon, or, or we're going to make shoes for aliens when they arrive. Everything I'm talking about is just expanding what we have proven works, but we just can't do it big enough without the resources.
Yeah, yeah, and you can't do it fast enough. And like you said, you'll make you'll make mistakes
Oh
if you
yeah.
move too fast, but you'll probably make the same mistakes that you would have made, but just slower. So you can correct.
Well, you'll have some different ones, no doubt. But I mean, the idea that it's smooth sailing with a whole bunch of cash, that's ludicrous. I don't believe that.
No,
But again, to your point, it just makes it so you can do certain things faster.
yeah,
And look, I'm a sprinter. I like doing things fast.
yeah, yeah. I think anybody in entrepreneurs, they're not patient people generally. And if you've got a competitive background, then you want to go fast and you want to win. That's why we just had our speed round.
Yeah. Well, I hope I at least placed.
I think you did. I think you came in first. You beat me. You win, Steven. All right. So I think that's going to wrap up. But before we go, why don't you tell anyone listening and watching how they can find these super comfy shoes? Where can they find them online,
Sure.
or find you if they want to reach out?
Well, if you're in the EU, xeroshoes.eu, and that's Xero shoes, plural. If you're in the UK, xeroshoes.co.uk, and if you're anywhere else, xeroshoes.com. We're also in a bunch of third-party sites, and you can find all those listed on our store locator at xeroshoes.com. And if you want to find us on social media, wherever you happen to @ or slash, go @ or slash Xero Shoes.
Perfect. All right. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up today's podcast. Steven, thank you for sharing all that experience with our listeners. And thanks to everyone listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Focal Insights Podcast. If you like this episode, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you can be alerted of new episodes. See you next time.